The fifth Hermetic principle is rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Where polarity describes the existence of two opposite poles, rhythm describes the motion between them, the fact that nothing stays permanently at either extreme. Every high recedes, every low eventually turns. The Hermetic claim is that this oscillation is not incidental to how the universe works, it is close to the mechanism itself. No tradition on earth has built rhythm into its actual practice more deliberately, more legally, and at more scales simultaneously than Judaism. Consider the layers, one inside another, like nested pendulums. There is the daily rhythm, morning, afternoon, and evening prayer, marking the turning of a single day into a structured cycle rather than an undifferentiated blur. There is the weekly rhythm, 6 days of active labor and 1 day, Shabbat, of complete cessation, not merely rest as recovery from work, but rest as a distinct mode of being, described in Genesis as woven into creation itself. The seventh utterance of a cosmos built in rhythmic alternation between making and ceasing to make. There is the monthly rhythm of the lunar calendar, tracked by the sanctification of the new moon or Rosh Chodesh. There is the yearly rhythm of the festival cycle, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, each tied to both an agricultural season and a historical memory, so that the natural rhythm of planting and harvest is deliberately overlaid with the moral rhythm of national memory, slavery and freedom, revelation, wandering and dwelling. And then the traditional scales the same pattern up further still. Every seventh year is Shmita, the sabbatical year, in which the land of Israel itself is commanded to rest, fields left fallow, produce ownerless, and debts released. This is Shabbat, the weekly rhythm, replicated at the scale of a nation's agricultural economy. And then every seventh Shmita cycle, the 49th year, comes the Yovel or Jubilee. Land reverts to its original ancestral owners. Indentured servants go free. The entire economic and social structure of the nation is reset. Leviticus 25 describes this with a phrase that should stop you. The Yovel is described with the same word, Shabbaton, that describes the weekly Sabbath. The Torah is explicit that these are the same rhythm, the same pendulum swing, expressed at three different periodicities: day, year, and half century, nested inside one another like concentric rings. This is rhythm as actual legislated structure, not merely observed pattern. The Hermetic principle says the pendulum swings in nature and in human affairs, whether we plan for it or not. A boom is always followed by a contraction, a period of expansion by a period of consolidation. What the Torah does is take that inevitability and get ahead of it, building the contraction phase deliberately into the calendar and the economy so that release and rest happens by design rather than only by crisis. A society that never legislates rest eventually gets rest imposed on it by exhaustion, illness, or collapse. The Torah's rhythmic calendar can be read as a form of applied Hermetic wisdom. If the pendulum swings regardless, wisdom lies in swinging it on purpose, at a scale you can absorb, rather than being swung by it against your will. The rabbis extend this rhythm to the largest scale imaginable, Jewish history itself. The classical, prophetic, and later Kabbalistic literature describes the historical experience of the Jewish people as a pattern of exile and return, galut and geolah, repeating across centuries. The Egyptian exile and the Exodus, the Babylonian exile and the return under Ezra and Nehemiah, the later dispersion following the destruction of the Second Temple, and many would say the return of our own era. Whether or not you take a position on the theological status of any particular return, the structural claim is the same one Hermeticism makes about tides and pendulums. Contraction is not the end of the story, and expansion is not permanent either. Jewish liturgy is saturated with this rhythm. Mourning practices with built-in time limits, so that grief is honored but not allowed to become permanent. Joys of festivals followed by ordinary days, so that celebration does not curdle into complacency. There's a personal, practical dimension worth naming before we close. People in real spiritual or emotional distress often experience their low points as evidence that things will simply stay that way, that the contraction is the new permanent condition. Rhythm, both as Hermetic principle and as lived Jewish practice, argues directly against that reading of experience. The Talmudic teaching that this too shall pass is not a comforting platitude bolted on Judaism from outside. It reflects the same structural claim built into the sabbatical and jubilee cycles that release, reversal, and return are not exceptions to the law of reality. They are the law. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the principle of cause and effect. Nothing happens by chance, and the far more demanding Jewish doctrine of hashgacha, providence, midah keneged midah, or measure for measure, and the place, if any, left for free will inside a law-governed universe.